Hey everybody, Dwayne Urban from Urban Defense LLC and the Maryland Gun Owners Group on Facebook. Again, I'll be the moderator for tonight's discussion. Along with me tonight is Andrew Sauer from Sauer, Lord, Ernstberger, and Inslee. We're filming here again from Urban Defense in Baltimore. Tonight, as many of you know, we're going to be going over updates on some of the bills we spoke about last time. That's going to be House Bill 704, the Firearms Tracking Technology Bill. Senate Bill 86, Raise the Age Act of 2023. Senate Bill 113, the Gun Industry Accountability Act of 2023. Senate Bill 1, the Gun Safety Act of 2023. And we'll also be going over a bunch of other bills that are in the pipeline and affect firearms and you to one degree or another in some way. So this is going to be a long one, so please hang in there. Before we get started, let me take a moment to thank our sponsors and our friends in the industry. As always, Top Gun Firearms, located at 2800 Bel Air Road in Falston. Maryland Police Supply, located at 617 Stemmers Run Road in Essex. And our cigar sponsor, as always, Spartan Cigar Lounge, located at 128 East Pulaski Highway in Elkton, Maryland. Ed and Peter, thanks again. And of course, Urban Defense LLC Firearms Training and Consulting. If you're viewing right now via Facebook Live video and you have a question or a comment, go ahead and submit it in the comment box. We'll address it. There's a period towards the end where we'll actually go through the comments if there are any questions. Also, please help increase our reach by commenting, hitting those like and reaction buttons, tagging friends, and sharing this video on your personal timeline or to any group that you think would like to see it. And remember, anyone can still comment on the rebroadcast. We will still check this even after the live stream has ended. Now, as I mentioned last time, a quick disclaimer. All statements made during this Facebook live stream are intended for educational purposes only and are not intended to convey legal advice or create an attorney-client relationship. The host, the speaker, highly recommend that attendees seek the assistance of legal counsel regarding questions you may have regarding firearm laws in the state of Maryland. So let's go ahead and get started with the progress of some of the bills we spoke about previously. House Bill 704. So Andrew, where are we at with that one?
As I'm sure you all remember, this was this wonderful piece of legislation from Delegate Queen. This would require any firearms sold by a bulk seller in Maryland, anyone that sells more than 10, to put an RFID tracker in the firearm, permanently embedded in it, that would contain information set by the Secretary of State Police using proprietary equipment to make that information available at all times. Thankfully, I'm sure in no small part due to everyone who's watching's efforts, this bill is still in committee. It has not had a second or third reading, which is wonderful. Crossover day is tomorrow. While not impossible, going back to civics class in high school, bills that have not passed from the House side to the Senate side of the Maryland General Assembly, if they have not passed by tomorrow, now, certainly there are going to be a few exceptions, emergency legislation, things of that nature. But a bill in the regular course that has not been discharged from the House to the Senate probably will not pass. So as it stands right now, I think there's a strong probability that this bill does not pass and become law in Maryland.
Very good. We may see it again, who knows, but as of right now, doing okay on that one. Okay, how about Senate Bill 86?
This is one bill that probably is completely, thoroughly, and totally unconstitutional. This was the bill that would require the minimum age to purchase a long gun from 18 to 21 in the state of Maryland, and with a couple exceptions, would prohibit anyone under 21 from possessing a long gun. This bill, we're in the same situation. Has not been discharged from committee. Still going there, has not had a second or third reader, and with crossover day, once again, being tomorrow, unless there is tremendous urgency to get this bill moving tomorrow, this bill is probably also going to fail.
Very good. Good news. Okay, Senate Bill 113.
This one, we're in a little bit of a different situation here. This one had a cross-filed bill in the House, House Bill 259, and this was the bill that, by design, was to interfere with the federal Firearms Members Public Accountability Act of 2023 is a blatant attempt by the state here to circumvent the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. This one, thankfully, there's no action in either committee still. It's both in the original committee in the House and the Senate. Now, if both chambers, crossover is not necessarily an issue in this case. So this bill is still alive. If it was to move through the House, through regular course and pass, and the identical version was to move in the regular course and pass in the Senate, this could still become law. So I would advocate anyone who has an interest in the issue to contact your lawmaker and voice your opinion on this bill.
This was Senator Waldstreicher and Lee, if I remember correctly.
Yes, and she has left the Senate. She is now the Secretary of State for Maryland, so she's no longer there to push this bill along.
Okay. All right, and then the big one before we get into all the other ones, Senate Bill 1.
Senate Bill 1 has managed to pass the Senate. It has undergone numerous amendments, but it is moving along, chugging right through there. It had a lot of opposition from Republicans, pretty much unanimously opposed it, but it passed the Senate 31-16. There have been a huge number of amendments, though, and the bill is no longer in its original form. You remember last time we were talking about soda shops,
yes,
where soda fountains were somewhere
right.
We could not.
Nobody commented to tell us what that was, but anyway.
We got no help there. Dwayne and I are still looking for any good soda fountains.
Yes.
So this has been modified tremendously. The number of locations that this would apply to has been stripped down. The biggest survivor is any place that sells alcohol for on-premises consumption. Now, we would view that certainly as bars, but that would also be a TGI Fridays. That would be a Friendly's. That would be anywhere else where they serve alcohol on-premises consumption, even if it is not what you would traditionally imagine a bar to be. So the vast majority of restaurants, movie theaters, plenty of places have liquor licenses and sell alcohol on premises. There is no requirement that this would apply only to people who are imbibing alcohol, which would already be covered under statute. But you, under this proposed legislation, could not take a firearm into any establishment that serves alcohol. Furthermore, there is a discussion of eliminating open carry altogether. And it would require one to carry in a concealed fashion. Printing or a momentary display of the firearm inadvertently would not count as a violation of the statute. But anyone, I've encountered these people, you certainly would have the right to open carry with an applicable permit in Maryland. That would no longer be an option. Still, the number of places you could not take it to would be, once again, schools, government buildings, polling places, but it's been pared down from its broad scope, chief amongst them because it was completely unconstitutional before a number of the venues that were enumerated. Now it has gotten better. I still think there is a lot of dubious constitutionality in here, but if this does pass, we are headed for a rough road. It's passed before crossover day, so it's already been referred to a committee in the House, so it's very important that you contact your delegates in the Maryland House and let them know.
So place of public accommodation and soda fountains, no more?
No more there, but polling places, places that serve alcohol, that's going to be a problem.
And there is actually another bill we're going to talk about that's going to talk about polling places as well. So, all right. So that's what we have so far on those four. So now let's go ahead and get into some of the other bills that are currently out there. Bill information and much more can also be obtained from the 2A Maryland website. We're not affiliated with that website, but very good information there. And it's a great resource. So that's 2A, so 2, the number 2, the letter A, and then the word Maryland.org. So if you want to check that out. Now, I want to say there was 49 total bills, and I must say, Andrew, my brain, it hurts after going through all of these, which we did review. We ended up with south of 26 that are actually either relevant or that have not already been withdrawn or are not cross-filed in some other way. So we're not going to waste our time on those. So I'm going to go right on ahead down that list, and we will get started. So the first one we're going to look at here is going to be House Bill 159, Criminal Procedure, Warrantless Arrest, Straw Purchase Participant. Now, this is one Democrat sponsoring it. It was introduced in a prior session as House Bill 211 under the 2022 regular session. And here's what it says in short. Adding the crime of knowingly being a participant in a straw purchase of a regulated firearm to the list of crimes which are subject to warrantless arrest, and providing a penalty on conviction of imprisonment not to exceed 10 years or a fine of up to $25,000 or both. It's simply, in my reading, and Andrew can certainly chime in, adds participating in that straw purchase of that list of 11, now plus 1, 12 crimes, which would fall under warrantless arrest, whereas if the person may not be apprehended, or they may cause physical injury or property damage to another, or they may tamper with or destroy evidence in those cases of warrantless arrest.
That's a very good summary, Dwayne. This was introduced, Dwayne's mentioned, by Delegate Attar. She's an assistant state's attorney in Baltimore City, and this bill has passed the House. It passed 115 to 19, and it's on to the Senate. There's a hearing scheduled for March 23rd in the Senate. For the law-abiding citizen of Maryland, this really will not change anyone's lives. While I'm not a fan of criminalizing more conduct than we need to, this would simply allow law enforcement, if they had probable cause to believe that one is participating or have participated in a straw purchase, they could arrest that person without obtaining a warrant first. The general rule in Maryland that Dwayne was referencing is that officers cannot arrest for misdemeanors that did not occur in their presence, and there are 11 statutorily enumerated exceptions. This would add that exception to the list as well. I question how many arrests would actually occur in this case, but this one is probably constitutional and has a strong chance of passing.
Okay. So the effect on the average gun owner probably not very high.
Law-abiding, nothing.
Okay. All right, so the next one, firearms. This is House Bill 162, firearms. Maryland Voluntary Do Not Sell Firearms Registry Establishment. There are 22 Democrats signed on to this one, no Republicans. It is cross-filed with Senate Bill 159, so we won't get into that one when we get there. And here's what it says in short. Requiring the Department of State Police to create and maintain a Maryland Voluntary Do Not Sell Firearms Registry in which a person may voluntarily enroll for the purpose of being prohibited from obtaining firearms. Prohibiting a dealer or other person from selling, renting, loaning, transferring a firearm to a purchaser, leasee, borrower, or transferee who the dealer or other person knows or has reason to believe is registered on the registry. So again, it requires the state police, and actually if you read into the actual language, it talks about requiring the Department of Health to create and maintain the registry. So it says that requiring the Department of State Police to maintain, but if you look at the law, from what I saw, it references the Department of Health, and again prevents a dealer from doing all those things that I previously mentioned.
This is modeled on the Gambler Exclusion Act, where one can voluntarily exclude themselves from a Maryland casino, and if you are on that list, you are then barred from entering Maryland casinos, and there are criminal penalties associated. I see this fairly often in the criminal practice, and what happens more often than not is a crime will occur at the casino, and the case will be resolved, but a condition of resolving the case is that the defendant has to register and be placed on the exclusion list. My concern with this crime is that there will be crimes that are tangentially firearm related that are resolved in fashions that would not prohibit a person from possessing or owning or purchasing new firearms, but instead prosecutors will begin to use this as a part of plea bargains. Defendants will be forced to register for this for certain periods of time or indefinitely. There is a mechanism to come off the list. You have to wait at least 21 days. You would have to file an application to be removed. So that is an option, but I'm not sure of how this will actually be utilized by the average person. This bill has passed in the House. It passed 96-36. It's been referred to judicial proceedings in the Senate. There has not been any action scheduled there, but this bill does have a chance of becoming law.
Okay. All right. House Bill 307, firearm safety, storage requirements, and youth suicide prevention, Jalen's Law. We have 8 Democrat sponsors on this, no Republicans. It was cross-filed with Senate Bill 858. The synopsis is altering a certain provision related to the storage of firearms and ammunition in a location that can be accessed by an unsupervised child, prohibiting the storage of firearms and ammunition in a manner that allows access by a certain person who is prohibited from possessing a firearm, repealing a certain provision related to negligence, and requiring the Deputy Secretary for Public Health Services to develop a youth suicide prevention and firearms safe storage guide with recommendations from stakeholders and committee. Again, firearms stored unloaded, stored in a locked container, in a tamper-resistant container is one of the things. If you read the actual language of it, and so you've got to store them in a locked container, tamper-resistant. Ammo is secured and not accessible to the prohibited person or minor. It also says, or the gun has to be rendered inoperable. 3 levels of penalties. Most serious, if one of these persons, whether it be a prohibited person or an unsupervised minor, accesses the firearm and/or ammunition and does harm to themselves or someone else, then it could be 3 years, $5,000 fine.
This has passed the Senate 36-10, moved over to the House. And Dwayne, you missed the most important part of this bill. If this becomes law, you're eligible potentially for a tax credit if you purchase items to bring yourself into compliance with this law, up to $250.
Actually, there is a bill on that, and we're going to get to that, but that's a part of this as well.
That's a part of this as well, yes. Okay. Tax credits here to sweeten the pot.
Yes. Up to, $250 or some nonsense like that. Yeah, something.
Yep, I can't wait. I'll call my accountant after this.
Absolutely.
The most serious part of this is no one wants firearms to fall into the wrong hands. No one wants tragedies to happen. No one wants accidents to happen. Depending on what transpires, it can actually even be bumped up to reckless endangerment under the statute, and that's a misdemeanor subject to 5 years imprisonment and or a $5,000 fine. The most distressing part of the statute is that would then prohibit a person from ever possessing firearms if they were convicted of that. Maybe they shouldn't be possessing firearms if they're willfully leaving them around and allowing others to access them. But we're dealing with terrible situations involving negligence, and this law is designed to prevent a tragedy. Whether or not it will be effective, I do not know, but it is definitely on a pathway to pass. Like I said, it is past the Senate, it's in the House now, and it looks like it's moving forward.
Okay. Next on the block, House Bill 364. Public safety, handgun permit requirement, repeal Maryland's Constitutional Carry Act of 2023. Delegate Grammer, Republican. It did receive an unfavorable report by the judiciary. It was introduced in prior sessions, 2022 regular session, House Bill 1206, essentially repealing the requirement that a person have a certain permit before that person carries, wears, or transports a handgun. and repealing certain criminal prohibitions against a person who is at least 21 years old wearing, carrying, or transporting a handgun.
States all over the country are adopting this type of registration, making constitutional carry be an option in the state where no permit is required. You just have to be not prohibited to have a firearm. You can't be a felon, insane, things of that nature. States all over the country are adopting this. This will not be passing in Maryland this year. The Judiciary Committee has determined an unfavorable report. This bill is unfortunately dead for all intents and purposes.
And that's what it was last year as well.
Yeah.
And I think previous years too, right? Wasn't this proposed previously as well, I think?
I never imagine this will pass in Maryland in my lifetime.
Yeah. Wishful thinking.
Yes.
Okay. All right, House Bill 413. Firearms right to purchase, possess, and carry. This is going to be 5 Republican sponsors: Grammer, Anderton, Akron, Bouchard, or maybe that's Boucher, and Hornberger. Synopsis: providing that a person may not be denied the right to purchase, possess, or carry a firearm solely based on the fact that that person is authorized to use medical cannabis. And this again was introduced in a prior session in the 2022 regular session.
In Maryland, fortunate or unfortunate, if you have a medical marijuana card, you cannot purchase, possess, carry a firearm here in Maryland. I know a number of people that have made the decision that the medical marijuana is more important to them due to their medical conditions, and I can certainly understand that. This would level the playing field because I'm certain that everyone out there knows someone who regularly indulges in marijuana and still possesses firearms. They just don't have a medical marijuana card. This bill, though, unfortunately, has not been moved out of committee. For all intents and purposes, it's not going to make it by crossover day, and that's the end of it.
All right, House Bill 481. Criminal law, wearing, carrying, or transporting a handgun penalty. 9 Democrats with 1 Republican, and the 1 Republican is Mangione. Cross-filed with a Senate Bill 889, so we won't talk about that when we get there. The synopsis: increasing from 3 years to 5 years the maximum term of imprisonment that may be imposed for wearing, carrying, or transporting a handgun. So people that are unlawfully wearing, carrying, or transporting a handgun, raising those penalties.
This bill, it's been getting a lot of media attention lately. There are a lot of issues. Is this an appropriate penalty? Is 3 years enough? Would 5 years be better? Several local politicians in Baltimore City have advocated for this increase. Others have been advocating against it. This bill is cross-filed, both in the House and the Senate, so crossover day is not that important. This bill is still live. There's a hearing scheduled in the Senate on March 21st at 1 o'clock. In the House, there was a hearing back in February. There's been no significant movement in action, and there are a lot of people, a lot of groups who have come out against this bill. It still could pass. It's definitely generating a lot of heat in Annapolis, but at the same time, it's far from a certain thing.
Do we see this as a bill that is going to help aid the courts in helping to give stricter sentences to gun violators, or?
It's possible. It really is possible, but at the same time, rarely are you going to come across an individual who is guilty of this offense and that you're going to see the court giving out a full 3 years to them. And in most occasions where you're going to apprehend a person for multiple offenses for wear, carry, and transport, the maximum penalty there is not the issue. It certainly will give the court more latitude. It would give the prosecutors more latitude. But at the same time, I think this might be a solution in search of a problem.
Roger that. So, I'm being told it is time for a commercial break. So, let me take a moment again to thank our sponsors and supporters in the industry. Again, Spartan Cigar Lounge, the cigar sponsor for tonight's event. Thank you guys, Ed and Peter, very much. Located at 128 East Pulaski Highway in Elkton, Maryland. So, if you're in that area, Go up and check them out. Even if you're not, it's worth the drive. Tell them you saw us on Facebook Live. Tell them that we sent you. Also, Top Gun Firearms, 2800 Bel Air Road in Falston. Devin and Mike, check those guys out. Maryland Police Supply, located at 617 Stemmers Run Road in Essex. Tina. Both of these places stock the Urban Defense brand of high-quality, non-firing dummy rounds for skills practice. So malfunction drills, reload drills, just simply loading and unloading. They're great for that, and they're the best out there. Sauer, Lord, Ernstberger, and Inslee. Special thanks to them for supplying Andrew tonight. And Urban Defense, who offers top-notch firearms training and consulting delivered by experienced law enforcement instructors. Our next Maryland Wear and Carry Permit class is Saturday and Sunday, April the 22nd through 23rd. There is a strict limit of 10 students per class. So we're not one of those groups that puts 80 people in a class. 10 students, that's it. So if you want a seat, you need to get a call to us, get a message to us, and we'll get you in it. Similarly, our next handgun qualification license training course is scheduled for Saturday, April the 22nd. These classes take place in Baltimore County and Middle River. Also, stay tuned for our upcoming Force on Force reality-based training scenario program. This is going to be a lot of fun where you're going to be able to develop your reaction and judgmental skills using the same equipment and training practices that we use in law enforcement. It's going to be great. You won't want to miss it. This is a great way to prepare you for, God forbid, the eventuality of an actual critical incident. Feel free to visit the website or call us for more information. And finally, U.S. Law Shield. As I make a giant puff of smoke in front of me. U.S. Law Shield. If you don't have firearm and self-defense insurance for less than $12 a month, you owe it to yourself to be protected from legal turmoil. Check out U.S. Law Shield. They protect you from the use of any lawful weapon, any in use of self-defense. It's not just firearms. And they won't abandon you on appeal like a lot of the other big names out there. Read the fine print. You can find more information about them on our website, www.urbandefense.org. To sign up, go online or go to your app store. Download the U.S. Law Shield app. Use promo code URBAN1. That's URBAN1. That's, you're going to see it on the screen as I'm talking about it right now. And you'll get 30 days free. They won't charge you the $20 startup fee, and your monthly rate will be locked in for the rest of your life. The application, or rather, the app is free, and it was just released last year, packed with tons of useful information on carry, the law, different reciprocity maps, and they're adding more all the time. So certainly check them out and use promo code URBAN1 for the special offer. Also, please help us increase the reach of this live stream video by commenting, hitting that like button or those reaction buttons. Tag friends, share this video to a group or to your own personal page. Remember, anyone can still comment on the live broadcast. That means you can share it on the rebroadcast rather. So even once the live stream is ended, you will have the ability to still view it, and it will also be stored once we get everything done this evening. Within the next day or two, we're going to get it uploaded to our YouTube channel as well, so you can watch it there. Okay. So, we were discussing, moving right along. All right, House Bill 580, election law, polling sites, firearms prohibited. This is one Democrat sponsor as of the date that these were printed, which was just a couple of days ago. And it reads, prohibiting a person from carrying or displaying a firearm on the premises of a privately or publicly owned building used as a polling site during an election, including a parking lot, or carrying or possessing a firearm within 100 feet of a polling site during an election, subject to certain exceptions. In most cases where polling places happen, I think this was probably already covered.
Yep.
But they're just, I guess, a formality on their end. But this was from in a prior session. This was also proposed in the 2022 regular session.
This has been introduced as an emergency bill. Most bills do not take effect until October 1st following the session. This bill would take effect immediately. Despite being an emergency bill, no action yet, still in committee, probably not going anywhere else.
Okay. All right. House Bill 589, public safety, handgun permits, expiration and renewal periods for retired law enforcement officers. Delegate Grammer, Republican, just one Republican on there. Cross-filed with Senate Bill 825, establishing alternative expiration and renewal periods for handgun permits issued to certain retired law enforcement officers. It essentially takes the expiration for those individuals, as prior mentioned, to 7 years, expiring on the last day of their birth month for an initial, and then renewals are done 5 years. Renewals are 5-year periods after that.
To all my friends who are retired law enforcement, this would be a wonderful bill. It is cross-filed in both the House and Senate, but it's still in both in the committees. So if you're in favor of this bill, call your legislator. Otherwise, I think it's not going anywhere.
House Bill 750, Gun Theft Felony Act of 2023. Now, this has 35 Republicans sponsoring it, 0 Democrats. It has been introduced in a prior session, the 2022 regular session. The synopsis is classifying the theft of a firearm as a felony and establishing a penalty for theft of a firearm of imprisonment not exceeding 5 years, or a fine not exceeding $1,000 for a first offense, and imprisonment not exceeding 10 years, or a fine not exceeding $2,500 for second and subsequent offenses. One other interesting point, if you read the law before I hand it over to you, Andrew, is it adds the theft of a firearm, antique firearm, or replica of an antique firearm to the criminal law section as a felony. And I found that to be curious.
No one wants their guns stolen. And if our concern was illegal guns on the street, the vast majority of them come from either straw purchasers or from burglaries. This would do something about it. Yet, this is probably going nowhere. Crossover day is tomorrow, still in committee in the House, probably not going to happen.
Okay. All right, House Bill 753, Juvenile Court Jurisdiction, Gun Offenses, Juvenile Gun Offenses Accountability Act of 2023. 32 Republicans, 0 Democrats. It appears this is the original filing, so this was not something that came before. Synopsis, altering the jurisdiction of the juvenile court to establish that the juvenile court has exclusive original jurisdiction over a child who is at least 10 years old, alleged to have committed a certain offense involving the use or possession of a firearm.
This is a news-driven bill here. I'm sure some of you have heard there was a misunderstanding in Anne Arundel County where a person who was a juvenile brought a firearm to school, and it was determined that in an effort to make less things criminal for juveniles, that they were not going to charge this young person who brought the gun to school. And this would reverse that. And anyone who is over 10 and illegally wears, carries, transports, or does a number of other things with a firearm would face penalties in the juvenile justice system. This bill had a hearing back on March 2nd, not cross-filed, just in the House, probably dead.
Okay. House Bill 756, Public Safety, Handgun Permits Expungement, or rather, Expunged Conviction. This has 2 Republican sponsors, and the synopsis is clarifying that an expunged conviction does not constitute a conviction that disqualifies a person from eligibility for a handgun permit.
As far as this bill goes, this is a very technical piece of legislation. If a hypothetical person is convicted of an offense that would bar them from possessing a handgun, let's just say second-degree assault for all intents and purposes, and they received a probation before judgment, successfully completed probation, 3 years after they completed probation and got it expunged from their record, under Maryland law, as it stands now, this is an area being battled by lawyers all across the state, that person still could not possess a firearm. I'm sure there's someone watching who says, wait, that happened to me and I've been able to purchase firearms. Well, be careful. I have seen letters myself within the past several months issued by the Secretary of State Police to individuals who had purchased firearms, and upon a more thorough background examination, the PBJ, despite being expunged, was unearthed. And technically, under federal law, because Maryland's unique in this regard, and I know this is really in the weeds, expunged convictions, while eliminated from a lot of databases, are still housed by the court. And so there still is a record of it. So it does not count, despite being called expungement, does not count as expungement under federal law. So technically, the person we just described, who got the probation before judgment to second-degree assault, successfully completed probation, waited a period of time, successfully got it expunged, could still be prohibited from possessing firearms. This would change that. I think the bill is a wonderful idea. At the same time, this bill is going nowhere.
So essentially, NICS would catch him up in this case. Okay.
And for those who don't know, what's next?
National Instant Criminal Check System, if I'm correct. National Instant Criminal Check System. All right. House Bill 824, Public Safety, Regulated Firearms, Possession and Permits to Carry and Transport a Handgun. 13 Democrats on here, no Republicans. Synopsis, altering the disqualifiers for possession of a regulated firearm, altering the maximum fees, qualifications for issuance and the renewal periods for permit to carry or transport a handgun, altering a provision of law to require rather than authorize the Secretary of State Police to revoke a certain permit on a finding that the holder does not meet certain qualifications. So a couple notes that I made before I pass it over to Andrew. Essentially, if you read the law, it doubles the fees. So $150 for an initial from $75, $100 for renewal from $50. If you need to get a duplicate or modification, it would be $20 as opposed to $10. Also altering the class topics. There was not any indication in there that I saw about altering the range component, meaning the shooting course, but adding in that state self-defense laws has to be in there, justifiable use of force or deadly force has to be a topic, proportional use of force in self-defense and de-escalation has to be a topic, safe handling and shooting proficiency. All topics, by the way, which were already in our classes to begin with, at least at Urban Defense, plus lots more on this, I believe.
It does, Dwayne, actually include now you have to have a live fire shooting exercise on a firing range is now required as well.
Okay, so for the purpose of the permit, as we discussed,
Yes.
which if you're live firing, you're already going to be firing on some sort of range. Are they indicating then that it must be a actual regular range, or are they trying to prohibit private property out of that?
I don't believe they actually define range in here, so that would be an area to discuss further if this goes on.
Roger that.
This is Chairman Delegate Clippinger's bill, and he's chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He is a very powerful force down in Annapolis, and he has been pushing this. This did successfully pass the House, 98-39. It has gone on to the Senate, and this could certainly pass both houses. It's in there before crossover day that we keep mentioning. Another component is it adds, if someone is not otherwise prohibited by state or federal law from purchasing or possessing a handgun, they're adding additional catch-alls in there to attempt, I'm not sure how successfully, but to attempt to screen more people out from possessing handguns. The biggest impact it's going to have to each and every firearms owner in Maryland, though, is the doubling of the fees, and I'm not sure you're getting any extra value from the doubling of the fees by the state police. But
Right.
This is probably going to become law.
Okay, House Bill 856, one Democrat. Correctional Services, Baltimore City Convicted Gun Offenders Private Pilot Program. This, I don't think, is going to have a lot of effect for most folks out there, but I did want to include it. Establishing the Baltimore City Convicted Gun Offenders Pilot Program to provide convicted gun offenders with individualized case treatment plans, guidance, supervision, and rehabilitation services, authorizing the court to order an individual to participate in the program as a condition of probation, requiring the Division of Parole and Probation to report to the General Assembly by December 1st of 2024, and each year thereafter on the effectiveness of the program and information to help determine if statewide programs should be implemented. Again, they don't reference the cost in this, but I'm sure there will be tons of bureaucratic positions created and more cost passed on to the taxpayers.
This is another bill from Delegate Attar, who is an assistant state's attorney in Baltimore City. I don't know how many of our viewers from outside the city are going to know. In Baltimore City, there is what's called the Gun Offender Registration Act. Only applies to Baltimore City. Similar to the sex offender registry, there is a gun offender registry, and anyone involved with a firearms crime under the Baltimore City Code has to register as a gun offender with the city police. This would turn this into a state law, provide state funding, state bureaucracy to supplement it. Right now, this still is in committee, unlikely to become law, but it's something to be aware of.
Okay. House Bill 860, Public Safety, Permit to Wear, Carry, Transport a Handgun, Denial, Refund of Application Fee. 16 Republicans on this one, no Democrats that I could find. It is cross-filed with Senate Bill 463. Synopsis: requiring the Secretary of State Police to refund certain application fees to individuals who were denied a permit to wear, carry, or transport a firearm from July 5th of 2019 to July 5th of 2022 for failing to satisfy a certain good and substantial reason requirement, and who file, you have to file the claim, but those who file a claim in a form and containing the information and supportive documentation required by the Secretary. And again, this isn't automatic, you have to file for it.
While Bruin was pending, these were people who were denied permits. Bruin, we all know, has had tremendous effects in the right to wear, carry firearms. I think this would be just and fair that this occur. Once again, in committee, has not moved out of committee. It is cross-filed, so crossover day does not matter, but both in the House and Senate, there's been no movement. While possible, very improbable that this becomes law.
Very good. House Bill 952, Crimes, Firearms, Penalties, and Procedures, Violent Firearm Offender Act of 2023. 15 Republicans on board on this one, no Democrats. It was introduced in a prior session, 2022 regular session. Synopsis: establishing, altering, and clarifying penalties for and elements of certain firearm-related crimes, prohibiting a district court commissioner from authorizing the pretrial release of certain defendant charged with certain firearm-related crime under certain circumstances, and prohibiting a dealer or other person from selling, renting, loaning, or transferring a regulated firearm to a purchaser, leasee, borrower, or transferee under certain circumstances. Again, it looks to me, and you can chime in if this isn't correct, but it looks like it adds the use or possession of the firearm crimes to the list of those no pretrial release factors. Other language changes were also added, apparently.
In Maryland, if you are arrested for any crime, you first are taken to a district court commissioner who will determine if you can be released pre-trial. If they deny you at that stage, you're then held to the next sitting of the district court, which, depending on, you hear horror stories of someone that's arrested Friday afternoon, Monday's a holiday, they don't go before a district court judge until Tuesday. There are enumerated crimes in Maryland, murder, rape, things of that nature, that a district court commissioner is not authorized to release anyone, and they have to be held without bond until it's reviewed by a judge. This would add several firearms crimes to that list. The goal behind it would be to get violent gun offenders off the streets. Still in committee, not cross-filed. This bill is essentially dead.
And keep them off the streets until their case could be heard.
Yes.
Seems like common sense. I don't know. Maybe I'm
Crazy
wrong.
ideas here. Crazy ideas.
Outside the box thinking. Okay, House Bill 974, Public Safety, Gun Violence, Victim Relocation Program Establishment. 21 Democrats, no Republicans, cross-filed with Senate Bill 921. Synopsis: establishing the Gun Violence Victim Relocation Program within the Victim Services Unit of the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth, and Victim Services to provide certain victims of gun violence certain services and assistance related to relocating for the safety of the victim or the victim's family. Establishing the Gun Violence Victim Relocation Program Fund as a special non-lapsing fund, requiring the Victim Services Unit to establish a certain oversight commission, etc. Now, at one point I want to add to this, because it's not just relocating. So yeah, it will cover the financial assistance for moving expenses, security deposit, rent, but also counseling, legal assistance, job training, and resources for people with disabilities. So the cost on this, who knows?
And we probably, fortunately or unfortunately, will never know. While being cross-filed, this bill has not had any movement in either the House or the state Senate, probably dead on arrival. But it would be a tremendous amount of money as written to fund this.
Yep. House Bill 1041, criminal procedures, pretrial release restrictions, firearms crimes. 6 Democrats on here, no Republicans. And it reads, prohibiting a district court commissioner from authorizing the pretrial release of a defendant charged with transporting a regulated firearm for illegal sales or trafficking, participating in a straw purchase of a regulated firearm, or possessing an unserialized firearm or unfinished frame or receiver, authorizing a judge to authorize the pretrial release of certain defendant under certain circumstances, and creating a rebuttable presumption that the certain defendant will flee and pose a certain danger.
Very similar to the bill we discussed a couple moments ago. Once again, a district court commissioner, it would remove their discretion and require that this individual be held until their bail could be reviewed by a judge. This is another bill co-sponsored by Delegate Attar from the city, so she sees all of this firsthand. Fortunately or unfortunately, this bill also is still in committee, not cross-filed in the Senate, so it's probably dead.
As I drop the ash into my lap. Fantastic. All right. House Bill 1250, Gun Theft Felony Act of 2023. This is going to sound similar to one we've already talked about. 10 Republicans on this one, no Democrats. Classifying the theft of a firearm as a felony and establishing a penalty for theft of a firearm of imprisonment not exceeding 5 years or a fine not exceeding $1,000 for a first offense, and imprisonment not exceeding 10 years or a fine not exceeding $2,500 for second and subsequent offense.
What should not be controversial is controversial. No one wants their firearms stolen. No one wants stolen firearms on the street. How about we do something about it? I sound like a broken record, not cross-filed. It's only in one chamber. It's in the House. Crossover day is tomorrow. Still in committee. This bill is probably dead.
House Bill 1296, criminal law, public utility interference, damaging or impairment by firearm or destructive device. 1 Republican on this one, no Democrats. Prohibiting a person from willfully using a firearm or destructive device to destroy or damage or obstruct, impede, or impair the service or transmission of gasoline, natural gas, propane, or electric utility system owned or operated by a gas company or an electric company. Prohibiting a person from willfully aiding, conspiring with, or employing another to violate this act, and providing that a person who violates this act is subject to imprisonment of up to 25 years.
We've all seen in the news lately the deranged individuals conspiring to destroy our utilities in the whole state, as well as across the country. There have been a number of people who've been charged with this. I believe there's already laws that would apply, but certainly increasing the criminal penalties or making specific laws could not hurt. But as a broken record, only introduced in the House. Crossover day is tomorrow. Still in committee. Probably dead.
Senate Bill 564, criminal law, theft of a handgun. 13 Republicans on this and appears to be one Democrat. Let's see, introduced in a prior session, 2022, synopsis, establishing the felony of theft of a handgun and establishing a penalty for theft of a handgun for first conviction, 2 to 5 years of imprisonment or a fine of up to $1,000 or both. For second and subsequent conviction, imprisonment for 5 to 10 years or a fine of up to $2,500 or both.
What a radical concept. We'll do something to the people who steal firearms. Once again, it's only in the Senate. Crossover day is tomorrow. Still in committee in the Senate. Probably dead on arrival.
It's just interesting to me. The ones with all the R's next to them seem to just never go anywhere.
It's a recurring theme here.
Yeah.
Even if they make when they talk about common sense gun control, this seems like common sense to me, but what do I know?
Senate Bill 655. Oh, here you go. Income tax credit for firearm safety devices. This is Democrat Senator Carter authorizing a credit against the state income tax for the purchase of a certain firearm safety device in an amount equal to the lesser of 100% of the purchase price or $250 during the taxable year, making the credit refundable, requiring proof of purchase to be provided to the comptroller for a firearm safety device for which an individual is claiming a credit, and applying the act to all taxable years beginning after December 31st, 2022. I'm going to get my tax person right on this.
If we truly believe, for argument's sake, that these devices will prevent crimes, they will prevent tragedies, and they will prevent harm to others, we should all be rallying behind this bill. Once again, only in the Senate, not cross-filed, still in committee, probably going nowhere.
Senate Bill 656. We're getting closer to the end, folks. So if you're still with us, thank you. 656, criminal law, failure to properly store a firearm, death of another. Democrat Carter, Senator Carter, prohibiting a person from storing or leaving a loaded firearm in a location where the person knew or should have known that a certain ward would gain access to the firearm, and prohibiting a person from storing or leaving a loaded firearm in a location where the person knew or should have known that an unsupervised child or a certain ward would gain access to the firearm, resulting in the child or ward using the firearm and causing the death of another. And I just made some notes here from reading it. Adds language such as, quote, ward, for when the person has been appointed a guardian. Makes this a felony punishable of 10 years or $10,000 fine or both. Adult prohibited from firearms possession that is subject to legal guardianship, essentially. They add that in, I guess, to the...
I'm a constituent of Senator Carter, and this bill, once again, only introduced in the Senate, not cross-filed, still in committee, probably going nowhere.
Senate Bill 744, Crimes and Corrections, Penalties and Procedures, Violent Firearm Offender Act of 2023. 13 Republicans, 1 Democrat, previously introduced in the 2021 regular session, establishing that a violation of a condition of probation, parole, or mandatory supervision that involves the use or possession of a firearm is not a technical violation for certain purposes, requiring the Commissioner of Correction to provide a certain inmate with a certain reentry kit and assistance in obtaining Medicaid benefits under certain circumstances, altering the elements of certain prohibitions against using a certain firearm in the commission of a certain crime.
In Maryland, if you are on parole or probation and you are determined to be in technical violation of parole or probation, there are certain statutorily enumerated penalties. For your first offense, it's up to 15 days of incarceration. I would really struggle to imagine a situation where one could use a firearm while on probation, and it would not already be greater than a technical violation. But let's just assume the case could occur. This would not make it a technical violation. This would make it a non-technical violation of parole or probation, and the offender would be eligible to have the maximum backup time imposed against them. Makes sense if we're trying to really go after people misusing firearms. Once again, only in the Senate, not cross-filed, still in committee, dead on arrival.
Roger that. And it would raise some of them from misdemeanor to felony.
Yep.
Thus making the penalties higher. Senate Bill 745, Criminal Law, Wearing, Carrying, or Transporting Handgun. Penalties, Gun Violence Accountability Act. One Republican on this. Altering certain penalties for certain violations involving the wearing, carrying, or transporting of a handgun on or about the person, and repealing certain exceptions for certain minimum sentencing requirements for a first violation involving the wearing, carrying, or transporting of a handgun on or about the person. Raises penalties and fines, 3 years to 5 years, $2,500 to $10,000, and adds some other fines, $250 up to $10,000.
Sponsored by a Republican, not cross-filed, crossover day tomorrow. This bill is going nowhere.
Senate Bill 935, public schools, school resource officers, firearms required. This doesn't apply to most people, but if you're concerned about the safety of your children in school, this bill, introduced by a Republican, Senator Jennings, requiring Baltimore City school police officer and a school resource officer to carry a firearm while present on the premises of the school to which the officer is assigned. Again, change in one sentence, basically mandating this.
This blows my mind that this is controversial. For the life of me, I just cannot appreciate and understand why it is. Baltimore City, many of you may not know, has its own police force that work in the schools, called the Baltimore City School Police. There was some controversy a couple years ago, and it was decided that officers permanently assigned to schools, and these are sworn peace officers, should not, would not, and could not regularly and routinely carry their issued firearm in schools. We're worried about school shootings. We're worried about crime against students. I think it would make perfect sense to make sure that the law enforcement officers who are employed by the city school system, working in the city schools, would carry firearms with them at all times. Who am I to think that, though? This bill, once again, introduced by a Republican, only in the Senate, still in committee, is probably going nowhere. Whenever you hear people talking once again about common sense gun safety and things of that nonsense, we can't even pass this to make sure that Baltimore City school police officers can carry firearms. If we can't trust them to carry firearms, who can we?
Right. I mean, we were obviously familiar with this as it sat previously. Some people probably weren't. But again, I echo your sentiment. It blows my mind that the police officers are supposed to be there to protect the students and the faculty and the school, but yet we're going to take their firearms away from them so that they would not be readily able to respond to a deadly force encounter, stop a school shooting or something like that. It's absolutely insane.
Everyone wants to keep children safe. This seems like the easiest, quickest, and most sensible way to do it.
So that's the pile for now. Andrew, which, if any, of these bills concern you the most? I know we spoke a lot. There's a lot of stuff here. Many of you viewers probably don't even realize this much stuff gets proposed all the time.
You need to be calling your delegates in the Maryland House and letting them know how you feel about Senate Bill 1 now that it is crossed over to the House. That is probably going to affect almost every viewer of this program. With that in mind, if any of these other bills I've mentioned you feel strongly, it's not too late yet. If you call them tomorrow at the opening of business and let them know how you feel, there still is time to make changes. These are your representatives. They represent you. Don't let them forget that.
So now we'll take any comments or questions from the audience if anybody wants to post any. We did have one from Andrew, a different Andrew. Enforce the laws already on the books. No need for more laws. Just makes sense.
A remarkable idea.
So, okay. We intend to do this again. The date that we plan to do another one of these, I believe we said, is Saturday, April the 15th. The thought process is let's let the session end the 10th, I believe.
Yep.
Let's let the session end. Let's see what shakes out, so that give us a couple days to kind of wrap our heads around what all of this means for all of us and all of you, so that we can then come back on here and educate folks, or at least let you know what we found and how it may impact you, especially our wear and carry people. So, with that said, we're going to bring this evening's discussion to a close. I'd like to thank our guests, our sponsors, our supporters, all of you, and everyone who is watching live, or any of you that will watch it on the rebroadcast and share it and all of that. Please continue to educate yourself on what's going on in Annapolis. Be engaged. Hold your representatives accountable at the ballot boxes. And to my Democrat friends out there that are watching this, that are lawful, legitimate gun owners, that love the Second Amendment in this country as much as anyone else here does, you're going to have to also help us out here, because we're outnumbered. Republicans are outnumbered, 3-1 by Democrats in the state. So please make your voice heard as well. We will continue to do this live stream, as I said, on the 15th. We will probably continue this. This has been a lot of fun, and it's been very eye-opening. And I think there's a lot of value out for you all out there. So we're gonna try to continue this as time goes on. If you're not a member of the Maryland Gun Owners Group on Facebook, make sure that you join and invite others to join. It's the one with the profile pic shown on the screen right now. There are one or two other similarly named groups out there. That's not us. So make sure when you join the one with the one that's on the screen in front of you right now. And remember, invite others to join. Okay? If you're not a member, join. Invite others to join. Just remember, you have to answer the 3 entry questions. It's 3 or 4 questions. You got to answer the questions. We do review and try to keep the trolls out. And try and keep this group going. As I said in the last one, this is probably the oldest and certainly the largest remaining of the original Maryland gun owner groups on Facebook. The other ones went away because the trolls got in and they got shut down.
Too many communists.
Apparently. So remember to like and share the Urban Defense page on Facebook as well. It helps us to grow and get the word out. Again, a special thanks to Andrew Saller here from Saller, Lord, Ernstberger, and Inslee for being with us again tonight. Look forward to having you back on the next one. For me, for Urban Defense, for our guests and our sponsors, stay safe, and we'll see you on the next one.